everyone, and thank you for joining us for this episode of the Shakopee Chamber Podcast. We created this podcast to help bring you important information and updates that affect Shakopee and the surrounding communities. My name is Tim Zunker, and I am the interim president for the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. So let's get started. At this time, I would like to introduce this week's guest, Congresswoman Angie Craig. Congresswoman Craig, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Well, it's great, Tim, and there's nothing that makes me happier than joining our local businesses on a Tuesday morning.
Yes, thank you. Even though it's cold, you're probably in Washington, right? So it's
No, I'm living through this Arctic winter here with all of you, just like all of you. My driveway still needs plowed too, but I refuse to go outside in minus 30 wind chill.
I know it's been interesting, but there's light on the horizon. I think we're getting back up into the 30s this weekend. So
yeah, just when I go back to Washington, it's good.
Yes.
The weather's going to improve here.
Of course, right?
Always.
So let's get started. Of course, we'll start with COVID, and so much of 2020 and the beginning of 2021 has been focused on COVID-19, whether it's federal relief for organizations, businesses, and families, to the distribution of vaccines. Currently, the legislature has been working on another COVID-19 relief package. Congresswoman Craig, would you be able to provide some updates on the stimulus package, including your support for providing direct financial aid to restaurants in the relief package, which passed out of the Small Business Committee last week?
Well, thank you, Tim. Yes, it's just been devastating, I know, for our local businesses. And first and foremost, I want to say that I think there's no question that we need to provide additional aid at a federal level. There are really 3 or 4 things that are huge priorities for me in this next package. And one of them, of course, is direct relief to our restaurants. The government told you to shut down. My belief is if the government tells you to shut down, that we ought to be there. And of course, I helped to create the Paycheck Protection Program, but for really those hardest hit businesses like restaurants, we need grant dollars. And so I'm on the Small Business Committee. I'm pleased to report that it is in the package, and I think it's going to stay in the package. We provided $25 billion in federal support for grants, and my team is going to be really aggressive about getting the information about how you apply for this grant out to our local chambers of commerce, to our mayors and our city councilors, to make sure that you have a really great opportunity. So the Restaurant Revitalization Fund is what it's called, is in the package. So watch the package as it proceeds. And obviously I'm going to be fighting to make sure that it stays in there. The number one thing, though, as we all know, is getting that vaccine in arms as quickly as possible. So a large part of this package is making sure that we're funding our county health departments and our state health departments so that we can get the vaccine in the arms as quickly as possible, and we can get customers back in your restaurants. I know the fund is great, but what I want most of all is to be able to go back and spend an evening in a restaurant, in a bar, having a good local craft brew. So really important. And then I'll just mention 2 other things. Our counties and our states and our cities have been great at getting those grant dollars that we provided in the first COVID relief bill, the CARES Act, to our local businesses too. So there'll be more money for local governments to survive, including allowing them to use that as replacement revenue for lost revenue in this next package. And then finally, it's a little off topic, but it's important to me in the sense that I fought for it so hard. In the first couple of packages, we defined dependents as kids that are 16 years or younger on your taxes. And that's ridiculous if you've got a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old. They're both your dependents, they're both your kids, and you ought to get an economic stimulus check for both of them. So we've corrected that in the next bill.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you for those updates. You recently co-sponsored legislation to invest $15 billion in our nation's workforce training system called the Relaunching America's Workforce Act. Would you please tell us details of this legislation and what it would do to help America's workforce?
Well, as you all know, I spent 22 years working in business before I came to Congress. And, as the business leaders in Shakopee know, this public health and economic crisis is arguably the single biggest challenge our economy has faced since the Great Depression. And, we see unemployment at 6%. Economists tell me, the Fed chair tells me that it's closer to 10%, which is, of course, as bad as it ever was coming out of the 08-09 recession. So The economy lost 22 million jobs, and jobs is going to be my primary focus as we get out of COVID-19. It's how do we create jobs in this district, across Minnesota, and across this country. So the Relaunching America's Workforce Act, it's an important piece of legislation. I worked on a section of it with my friend and our Senator Tina Smith, and it was included as a part of addressing this crisis. So unfortunately, the system itself for workforce development has been struggling for many years, and this has been a huge priority for me. I worked in manufacturing for more than 20 years, and of course, making sure that we have the right skills for the jobs that your businesses have is incredibly important. It was a problem before the pandemic, and it's going to be a problem, I think, to full employment coming out. So the bill would revitalize the Crucial Jobs Program by injecting about $15 billion dedicated to supporting all those millions of workers who've lost their jobs as a result of COVID-19. So the key is going to get companies back up and stable and hiring. And the key also is going to make sure that those individuals in our communities have the right skills for the jobs that are going to exist post-COVID and, of course, into this next century. So I'm really, really supportive of trade skills and career skills and technical education. Just as a member of Congress, one of my own sons is a machinist. And I just want to make sure that we've got a program in place to get you the right employees here as the economy begins to really improve and develop over time.
Great. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Craig. Main streets and small businesses can be considered the heart of a thriving economy in many districts, and I believe this is especially true in the 2nd District of Minnesota. Your website gives details on the Federal Reserve's Main Street Lending Program. Would you be able to give information on this program and how it can help our small businesses in Minnesota District 2?
Yeah, this program, in all honesty, is probably one of the least successful ones coming through the pandemic, and I'm really saddened by that. It's one of the areas where I think the federal government has come up short during the pandemic. The program was designed to provide some emergency support to those mid-sized U.S. companies. So not, our small businesses, even though we called them Main Street, it was sort of the big businesses had access to capital, the smaller businesses had access to the Paycheck Protection Program and EIDL loans or EIDL grants, but there was sort of this group of businesses left out. But I understand that, if we take a look at that program, and I've encouraged the Small Business Administration and the Treasury to take another look at this program to see if it can serve as a more important tool. It was only 3% subscribed. So that tells you that the take up among those mid-sized companies was not good enough. We appropriated the dollars to it. So we need to take another good look at that program, I think. And if you're a business owner and you're looking for support to kind of get you to the light at the end of the tunnel, call my office. We'll be glad to give you sort of a rundown of all the various programs that are available to you. And especially if you're a restaurant, if you're a live events or live venue provider, call my office. We'll do our best to get you in touch with SBA, get you in touch with local lenders in the way that makes the best sense to you. But I wish this program had been more successful, Tim. But we've kind of thrown the kitchen sink at support, and except we haven't had that grant program for restaurants, and that's what I'm making sure is in this next bill.
Great, thank you so much. It seems we are continually discussing issues in Shakopee when it comes to jobs, housing, and transportation. Would you be able to touch on some of the initiatives you are working on at the federal level that helps Minnesota District 2?
Yeah, creating jobs and affordable housing and expanding our transportation infrastructure. These have been huge priorities for me, and they're so critical to supporting every one of our local communities. And I think they're going to be even more important as we think about how we revitalize our economy post-COVID. Now, my experience with infrastructure in particular was in the private sector is when the public sector invests in infrastructure. In the case of my former company, it was an interchange and a new bridge, right? Then you often see the public sector investment follow. So earlier this week, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee advanced about $100 billion in funds that would be included in the next COVID relief package. And I'm no longer a member of that committee because I moved to Energy and Commerce, which is where about 60% of the legislation that flows through the House comes from, including energy policy and healthcare. That committee really has put some important things into that package. So it's got much needed relief to millions of workers and residents of rural and urban communities. The other thing that I believe we're going to still need post-COVID, and I think you're seeing a huge push for this right now in the Congress and certainly among myself and many of my colleagues, is this push to make sure that everyone has access to high-speed internet in this country. So COVID relief, there'll be some infrastructure funding inside this next COVID relief bill for our communities. But at the end of the day, I think we've got to put forward and finally deal with the lack of infrastructure funding in this country. You only have, Texas in the South, they are not used to the kind of weather we're used to.
No.
They don't have the infrastructure to deal with it. And we're seeing right now what happens when you get a snowstorm or you get an ice storm down south. We've got millions of people who've lost power, and they're huddled up in hotels if they can afford it. So it's long past time to invest in infrastructure in our country, and I think you're going to see post COVID-19 this be one of the highest priorities for this administration.
Okay, great, thank you. And yeah, I have friends in Texas right now, and they were sending pictures, and I mean, some people were sleeping in cars because the power was out in their house. So it's crazy what's going on down there.
Yeah, Tim, I got a text from a good friend of mine down south who said, please come and get your weather. Take it back.
Well, I had a friend who said that too, and I wrote back, I'm like, it's 18 below right now. So
right. Yeah, I did. I just sent a screenshot of our weather as a response. So there you go. But the truth is they're not equipped to deal with this.
No. Yeah, definitely. So awesome. Thank you. And you have always made yourself available to the district. If people are interested in reaching out for things like an appearance at their business or organization, what is the best way to connect with you and your staff?
Tim, that's great. And thank you for that comment. I often like to say that, this district is 25% Republican, 25% Democrat, and 50% who don't like Democrats or Republicans. And so I try to run my office, on a completely nonpartisan basis. I'm so proud of my district team, and it gives me a lot of pride that folks in our community recognize that we're trying to do this different, that we're trying to run this district office as a customer service center, regardless of politics and whatever nonsense is going on in Washington at the time. So I hold a town hall meeting every month. Right now we're doing it virtually. Before that, though, we did the first, I think, 13 live and in person, where people can just line up and ask me questions. And sometimes I get yelled at from the left, and sometimes I get yelled at from the right. And what most of those events teach me is that the majority is still right there somewhere in the middle. And so, I'm so excited that I get to continue to represent this district for the next 2 years. And my office is available to everyone. And, I've got caseworkers on my team who help you deal with the red tape of the federal government. If you've got a problem with the Small Business Administration, with Treasury and a tax issue, with a passport that you've been waiting on and you can't get an answer, Social Security, if you're a veteran and you can't get through to the Veterans Affairs, that's exactly what that district office is there for. So if you want to reach out to my office in DC, you can reach out directly via telephone at 202-225-2271, 202-225-2271. And my district office can be reached by calling 651-846-2120. That's 651-846-2120. And of course, if you prefer to email, we've got a way to do that on my website for both of those offices. So again, we're here to serve this district. That is the job of being a true representative in Congress. And in the meantime, I know you see a lot of nonsense in Washington, and I'm just going to continue to try to do what's right for our district and for the business community here, and do the best we can to make sure that you're still standing after this pandemic, that we rebuild this economy together and create jobs together. That's my focus.
Great. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Craig. And thank you again for joining us today and sharing updates and information on the work you're doing for Minnesota's Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District. It is greatly appreciated, and for just being open and communicating with the chambers and everything. I know I have colleagues at Dakota County Regional, Marine, and the Ag Crew, and everyone else, and just making yourself available to us with questions and different things that we have, and this podcast too, and being part of our annual meeting. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And if there's anything I can do for members of your business community, please reach out.
Perfect. Thank you. And everyone, thank you for joining us today. Be safe, be well, and we'll see you next time.